I just got done filming the Cypher Talk podcast, and I don't really get interviewed that often, and I thought we had a bunch of really interesting conversations. So the host, Meg, said I'm welcome to repost it on my channel. So here you guys go.
What drew you into the realm of AI in the first place?
So there was a TV show, Jeopardy, and they at one point had this system called Watson on, and it was playing Jeopardy. And I was still a little bit younger, and my mom was watching Jeopardy, and I was like, how is a machine making decisions and talking like a human? And there was this little clip, and it's still in my head. They ran it to explain what the kind of concept was, and it was called machine learning. And it was you just let the machine itself tune its own parameters. You don't program it. It learns. And it just kind of clicked right then that would be an interesting thing to kind of know about. And I was still trying to figure out what am I going to do for a career? And so I started learning about machine learning. I got sort of certificates on the side while I had another job to be in that space and kind of know how that's working. And then yeah, it's still to this day, it's just that same fascination about how intelligence works. I feel like it's kind of introspection on how I think and how machines learn. And I've learned a lot about animal intelligence, like crows and fish and dolphins and all these things. And it's just endlessly fascinating to me. So that's why I do it.
You run a YouTube channel that's specifically focused on artificial intelligence. I'm curious, can you walk me through when you first started it, really what you thought you would be focusing on to today? Because so much has changed even over the last number of months, never mind years.
The YouTube channel is just my journey trying to figure this all out. So my YouTube videos are always just whatever it is I'm learning about, and certain moments just coincide with the mainstream. Everyone was curious about ChatGPT, and everybody's curious about new models like Gemini, and everybody's curious about things like Sora because they're productivity tools. But then I also go a little bit further. I really like to just read people's opinions, personal blogs on what they think intelligence is, what it means for society to have systems that are highly intelligent, if it's all exponentially changing, what the world looks like with robots, where's people's places in it. And then it starts becoming a little bit more like futurism,
Before you were creator, you were also in the trenches as a founder and CTO. Can you tell us your founder story?
I grew up in a place called Park City, Utah. It's right outside of Salt Lake. And there, the Sundance Film Festival is a big thing. Mm-hmm. Every year, all these movies come in. And we started, when I was in college, just creating ticketing systems for the different venues. People want to see the movies, they want to attend all sorts of other side events that are happening. So we built a company, and I was in exactly the same phase you are, where we're just going to college, trying to figure out how we're going to fund this thing, and pitching investors, building tools. And yeah, we just somehow got that chicken and egg issue kind of solved, where a few venues wanted the software that we built to help them sell tickets to their events. So something like Ticketmaster or Eventbrite. Eventbrite eventually is what took our company down, but it was called Ticket Cake. And then also the investors that saw the profit that you can get from the service fees and from working with the venues and taking cuts of different revenue streams that come in. So we were just kind of piecing that all together. And then the CEO of Zappos in Las Vegas, Tony Hsieh, was starting a fund at the same time. This was 10 years ago. And he invested in our company. That brought me to Las Vegas. And then we tried to grow the company. And we had this amazing arc where making money, felt like we were going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, got kind of, I guess, overly confident, just to be honest. And I didn't think about my customers enough. I started building the tools I thought they needed, but they didn't. And we spent a bunch of money. And at the same time, Eventbrite was able to kind of come in and essentially take all our clients, offer the same thing we were trying to offer, but they just had better engineering and they were moving faster and they're just a more experienced team. And eventually that just kind of ran out of runway, and it just sort of made sense to kind of stop that project. It didn't look like we were going to catch up and keep a solid market. That ended up becoming the beginning of the next business. And now I work in the gaming, help make games. But I went through the entrepreneur thing kind of twice, and now I'm on my second phase. So
how did that experience in particular shape your lens on AI tools and startups? Do you think that things would have gone differently for you guys if you had access to the tools that people have today, like Cursor or OpenAI?
Yeah, possibly, actually. I haven't ever thought about that. But you know what? The fundamental problem, I really think it was kind of an engineering versus another engineering firm kind of battle, right? At the same time, we had raised money and we had a startup and we had a certain niche, but we weren't 50 developers like Eventbrite was. We didn't have a sales team like they did, where they could kind of talk to, and Ticketmaster especially, where they could talk to venues and say, hey, we'll give you some money up front, but we want exclusivity for your ticket. tickets. So we just weren't like the well-oiled machine that was at scale. I know you probably heard like Ticketmaster also is kind of a monopoly almost too. So it was like kind of hard to get into that. And there's been a lot of it. That's been all exposed now, but we were dealing with it back when everybody still liked Ticketmaster.
Before they knew about the fees.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that, yeah, something like Cursor, had it existed and I had really built the same engineering team, which was like only 4 people at the time, to utilize the tools that are around now, I think we could have iterated quite a bit faster. I mean, clearly the real problem was probably listening to the venues more and like really having a much tighter connection to what the client wanted and not what I thought they wanted. But had that been solved and we could scale with AI tools, I could have seen that maybe going a little different. So yeah, I mean, it's a golden opportunity for people to build stuff. I mean, I don't know if you played with Gemini 2.5 and Cursor, but just yesterday I was playing around building these like slot machine games, and there's this old game called Worms. I tried to recreate it, just vibe coding. And
What is Worms?
it's a video game, but there's 2 teams. You have like 3 worms. The other person has 3, like literally worms, like little animated worms that are like on a 2D scroller like Mario. And they just, they try to like outsmart each other. Like they have like grappling hooks and little like grenades, and the worms are like in battle. And it was just like a really, really fun game.
Tell me more about what you're doing in the games world as well. Because I think from like a economic or like a startup perspective, it's just one of those markets that I know a lot less about, but I feel like I keep seeing it more and more. And so tell me about kind of, because you're also in Vegas, and which is a different version than kind of like the maybe video game competitions that people are also creating for. But can you paint that picture for me?
The slot machine industry is just old, right? Like they're video games, but they're really all just about chance. Like the simplicity of what the magic is, just that kind of dopamine hit when you're just waiting, like to see, am I get like 3 sevens going to line up, and other kind of mechanics. So yeah, my business partner has like a really good market he's a YouTuber that has like a really good audience, and he's got a real passion for it. And as an entrepreneur, I felt like I've kind of been through this process that you're going through now with my other companies. And yeah, I was like, okay, I'll kind of do the boring stuff. You can be the creative. He understands slot machines on a level that like nobody does. He's been doing it for like 11 years, and I can help him, just organize the team, get the product done, get all the contracts signed, and make the partnership. So together we're just kind of going at it. The YouTube stuff I do on the side is more clever. This is more just like brute force. I just have to like do the hard work.
I think so much that's in like the like -1 to 1 phase is a lot of brute force. Because you're like creating things that don't quite exist yet, and so it's hard to like, you have to have something in order to scale it. And so when you're creating something from nothing, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. I get that.
I don't know if you're like, do you have a voice inside your head? Like, do you kind of talk to yourself?
I would say so. It's not always like English.
Sometimes just emotion, pure emotion.
It's either emotion or like I don't even know how to describe it. You know how like people like secretaries came up with their own shorthand like back in like 20s and 30s or whatever? Mine is like mental meg shorthand, where like if somebody were actually listening to it, I think they would only get chunks of it. It would sound like I grew up in some like weird kind of English speaking but not really place, but it makes sense to me. And I think I don't know if it's my brain being really lazy or it just bounces around so much that it has to do that. But there is like an auditory thing.
Okay, but if you do a good job, do you see an emoji? Do you see like a smiley emoji being like, you did a good job, Meg? Or is it just a chunk of word?
It'll usually be chunks of word. I don't see do you see emojis?
No, mine's all audio.
Okay.
Mine seems like somebody else, like my dad or mom or something, like talking to me, but it's my own voice.
Yeah.
Like the reason I was bringing it up is because as an entrepreneur, I did kind of step into different voices. Like there was like, if I felt like I was doing business, like I thought to myself, okay, look, you're the leader of this company. You like are an owner, like you're supposed to like lead. I had a different voice that sort of talked to me, and that would probably push me harder than the voice that I'd hear at home. Like when I was like, okay, you're on your own time. And tax season is coming up when we're filming this, right? We're like 2 weeks away from taxes. I don't know if you've already done yours, but I did my business taxes in like late January. Perfect. And they're like 3 times harder than my personal, but like I haven't been able to get my personal done yet because I have these 2 voices. I have one that's like in business mode, gets done, personal mode, like I let myself slack off. And I think that's kind of the key to a lot of entrepreneurship is like getting the right kind of kindness to yourself, the forgiveness when you make mistakes, the same kind of like confident voice in your own head. And that's, I don't know. That's usually what I focus on when I'm trying to like improve myself or get better.
Did you ever take any acting lessons?
In college I did, but just like as
Yeah.
an elective. It wasn't like
Okay.
a
I ask because that's common within that realm of things is you like step into different personas. I understand what you're saying. I think I've had people tell me like both ends of the spectrum, which is like pick who you are, be super consistent with it, with like everything, and just like drop every other personality or like version of you that you have. And then there's other people who are like, in order to maintain, you know, some semblance of like a love life outside of your job or your startup, or to also like be able to sleep at night, like you need to learn how to step into these kind of like different versions of you in order to like live that life. And I don't know personally where I've landed, and I bet you all kind of like iterate depending on what I'm prioritizing. But I've heard both sides, and so I was wondering if it like if you happen to have a background in acting or something like that, because I think for some people it's easier for them to make that kind of personal transition, and for other people it's really, really hard to.
You know, for me, trying to learn this meta skill of when to be the right version of myself has been kind of a lifelong battle.
I love that. And I think there's a man, I haven't thought about this in a while. There's like probably about 6 months of time where I spent trying to develop a personal thesis about my metamind, which is a term that I kind of made up. I don't know if anybody else uses it, but it's pretty much like my mindset of my internal monologue, or like the everyday version of me. Kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
how when you're meditating and you're able to like separate like your one version of you, maybe like the conscious from kind of like all the unconscious gunk that's like passing all the time. And so I was trying to better understand like my relationship between these two versions. And I never honestly got there, but I think part of what you're saying is reminds me of that. And I
For
think
sure.
it's always
It's so
interesting to
overlapping with that. I'm not good at meditating yet, but I do think it's an important thing. And I think that is what it's all about. Like stepping back from your thoughts. It's probably very similar.
And there are other ways to do it too. I mean, I think being present, or I don't know, even like when you're trying to go to bed or something, you can kind of just observe it better. I want to talk more about your YouTube channel, and in particular, something that I'm really interested in is the creator economy. And I think part of it, like you're in this cool place where you talk a lot about AI. I think one of the reasons that this even economy and the fact that you have this audience who's interested in this thing is because of the emergence of a lot of interesting kinds of technology and this new market. I'd love to hear from you, like, why do you think this creator economy even became viable today? Like, why does it exist?
I'm sort of motivated a little bit by anxiety. Like I think my audience is probably similar to me in the sense that they're like worried, is new technology going to make me obsolete? Am I going to not be as useful in my company? Am I going to get myself into a situation in the future where robots do everything and I haven't prepared for the future properly? So that's the kind of people that need that sort of thinking, that want to work through problems like that, are my creator economy. And then generally speaking, I have a couple friends that are in the finance space, and I felt like, especially during the pandemic when they kind of blew up on YouTube, it was people wanting to know how to like invest in Robinhood and like, what do I do with my money to invest? And then some people are just more entertainment, like they just need more people to like chill out with. And it seems like the creator economy has captured something human, something natural, something imperfect that just traditional TV didn't really provide. I don't know if you're like this way, but it seems like the best pieces of content are the ones I've spent the least time on. They're the ones that just kind of flow out of my head. Over time, my videos have gone from being like fairly well scripted to kind of more just like be on this journey with me. And you know, I don't have a huge following, but like those best performing ones have all been the ones where I've been probably the most candid. So yeah, it must just be a craving for authenticity, I would guess.
How much power do you feel like you have over, I don't want to say like power over what you're creating, but sometimes something that I think about is that like, even if I'm comparing, let's say my Instagram, whatever, like reels that are popping up versus the YouTube ones versus the ones on X, those algorithms have me categorized very, very differently. And so the types of things that I end up consuming, even if I'm following some of the same, like mostly the same people, end up being quite different. And so when I think about the kind of reverse of that, that must mean that as a creator, even if you're using multiple different platforms, you're probably getting a different type of audience, or you have to watch how you're phrasing things, or, you know, like, I don't know, like whatever title that you use differently. And so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about, like, do you think about that? Do you hate that? Do you enjoy it?
All the time. The bad side is that the algorithm is absolutely like programming society. Like I do feel a pressure, like my videos are much snappier now. They're much more like ADD, they jump around. And that was a result that like when I went too long on a topic, the views just weren't there. And if I'm not growing my channel, then I'm never going to be able to like make money on this. So yeah, I felt kind of pushed in that certain certain direction. And there is certain aspects of like not swearing on camera and stuff that maybe in real life I might do, but like I just don't because I do want sponsors. There is a kind of a fakeness and a certain amount of push that the algorithm is going in different directions that I have to follow. And yeah, I kind of resent that. But on the other hand, it's not that much different than just every part of society. Like when I go to the gym, there's certain etiquette. When I'm at work, there's certain etiquette. When I'm with my friends, there's etiquette. And I tailor myself for those too. Do you know what I mean? So it's not ridiculous. And I truly get to, choose all the articles that I talk about. I get, for the most part, to be who I want within some constraints. It feels more freeing than TV was in the past. And I would say it's free enough that we should be kind of like thankful for it. I think the creator economy is like democratizing all sorts of ideas and things. So I'm definitely in favor of it overall, but it's, let's not pretend it's like all sunshine. Like there's some gaming going on, and the algorithm itself, like it chooses who you want. And once your cluster's locked in too, like I have a couple friends that have amazing niches, right? Like the one that's in the slot machine space and the finance space, and they're also stuck. Like if they make a video, even a very high quality video that's not for that cluster, that target, it's going to go dead. Like they have to build up. If they really care about that subject, you better be motivated to like build up a whole new channel in that genre, or slowly bring your audience over and deal with like lots less views for a long time. Like, yeah, it's just the way it works.
What are your thoughts on decentralized platforms?
In terms of money, like when it comes to cryptocurrency and stuff, it seems really powerful. I get a little bit sick of the kind of Wall Street control. I feel like there's way too many billion-dollar companies that are just like in between middlemen. And I sort of love the idea of people having ownership over their stuff. So in that sense, pretty good. However, when it comes to AI, I am sort of the opposite. I'm not super big on open source at any cost. I do know that open source is like an amazing way usually to build a community. It sort of, in theory, keeps power away from centralized actors that could be bribed or kind of want to manipulate the public. But AI in particular is something that I think can be just so powerful. I'm not quite sure I'm ready for a world where everybody just has the kind of power for like bioweapons and for mass manipulation and stuff. 99 out of 100 people want to do the right thing. They have empathy. They don't use things negatively, but can they all naturally combat the 1% like they do in so many other open source systems? I'm a little bit more in favor of closed source, or like open sourcing things at a certain point when they're really robustly tested, or maybe of less power in some cases. I guess skin in the game is a better way to put it. Like if you've ever read like Nassim Taleb's books, when everybody's equally punished when something goes wrong and equally benefit when things go right, it's a perfect system, right? And just that's a little bit of a different question than like decentralization all in all. But yeah, if decentralization means that we're all responsible and we all benefit, then I'm all for it. But there's many mechanisms that kind of have to sit on top of decentralization to make that work, and that depends on the use case.
Yeah, and I think like the thing that you just mentioned would be very hard to like doing anything en masse with decentralized anything. These are very tough sentences for me to make right now, but it's tough to do.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're not on like Mastodon or Blue Sky or anything.
I have both of those, but no, I'm not like actively there. But it's because network effects aren't there. I guess if the audience was big enough, I would. But Blue Sky seems really cool. Like I do think that there's something. Okay, so two things. One, the Blue Sky thing is really interesting because there isn't one algorithm you can plug and play. Like I would feel very different about social networks if I could choose, like I'm on Instagram, but like I'm going to plug in the educational algorithm and I want it to bring me just like educational stuff. And I don't want to see like people fist fighting and stuff that, even though my instinct would be to watch it and they would get more attention, it's just not good for me and I don't want it. Like I want to control my environment better. So I don't like how there's one algorithm. Blue Sky lets you plug in different algorithms. In theory, that's a very special and very different system. And that changes my whole opinion of how a social network would work. So I hope Blue Sky does work. The other thing I was going to say is when it comes to skin in the game, I always have this one example, which was DuPont, the company that makes chemicals, I guess, for like for laundry and stuff like that. In history, we're making these products, right? And they sold them, they made a lot of money, but then the byproduct of what they did got dumped into the water. It takes a lot of money to clean that out of the water. That ended up causing like a lot of problems, but it's not like they paid that. Like, you know what I mean? Like they were taking the money from building the product, but they weren't paying for the problems that it caused. And that's like what I mean. Like if that can all be in the same bubble, where if they're also responsible for cleaning up the water that they pollute, then like it kind of makes sense because that will eat into their profit. That's all taken care of. And then they have an incentive to like make sure that they optimize how much pollution they put out there because they have to pay, for it. And that's what it's always about with the systems, whether decentralized or centralized.
Interesting. So a version of, the way that we tax people's carbon emissions to a certain extent, we need that, but for the social economy.
Yeah, I can't say I always have easy answers for those things, but yeah, depending on the situation, looking at who benefits and just making sure that they're not offloading, like they're not privatizing the profits and socializing the costs is something to keep an eye on.
No, I think it's a super interesting point. And that's why I've been like keen on watching like betting marketplaces in terms, not like just betting of like, like normal gambling, but like, in terms of like elections or things like that I find to be super interesting. And also, I mean, I'm going to put my like personal thoughts about Musk aside, but the fact that he's integrating payments within X, and I think X is probably going to be like one of the best positioned platforms to have some kind of like payment creator economy incentivization structure integrated within it, I'm very curious to see how that's going to unfold. And I think it's tough because we have to have a lot of trust in whoever's creating it. It's not like the people are creating it.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, I think as an experiment, it's going to be a fascinating one to watch. There's like tipping and you can subscribe to somebody, but there's not like a fractionalized payment where I can like, I don't know, not as much like in the way that I imagined, but maybe I'm just not paying enough attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's network effects are so hard to overcome. I think the Brave Network did something like that, and like Patreon's kind of tried to do things like that. But yeah, it's always hard because once you have network effects and everybody's on one platform, like those decisions are just going to stick, like it's not always about optimizing those. But yeah, I mean, the attention economy itself has one danger to be aware of, which is that like what drives attention always isn't the healthiest thing for like the individual or for society. So that part is kind of tricky too, because even if you have a totally decentralized system and like you just make money by doing whatever and there's no censorship, it does seem like it would lead towards car accidents or attack, like just all these weird things that like you can't not look away from, right? But also
the easier to game it as well, where it's like, creating like bots that spread a bunch of stuff or disinformation, like whatever it is that you want, just because I mean, I guess that's part of like the idea of anarchy, is there are certain things that we have to be a little bit more worried about.
Anarchy when you don't get paid for attention seems a lot better, like, but when you get paid for that, wouldn't it mean, I don't know, like, don't you think some people on like YouTube in the comments, like they literally say the thing that I don't even think they believe. They're just like, they just want to say it because they know you can't be like, there's no way you believe that, or you see something weird happen and they're just like, I was there, I can vouch that happened for real. And you're like, no, you can't. Like, why you just say that because you want me to then comment? I'm like, oh. Yeah. But I will say I'm really happy that tools like ChatGPT and Gemini actually cost money, because I would not want, and hopefully this doesn't change, but I would not want ChatGPT to be like based on how much ads it sends me, because it would naturally be reinforced towards the most manipulative, the most not in my best interest answers. And unfortunately, like a paywall sucks, but paying OpenAI for ChatGPT is a better business model than them giving it to me for free and then getting paid by the way they manipulate me. I'd rather have them get their money by trying to give me a product that works in my best interest no matter what. So
do you have any thoughts on the future of the advertisement economy? Because so many people are worried that it's dying, because if we're starting to use ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever in place of Googling something, because it probably gives us a much more thorough answer and not a bunch of ads, that's great for the user. To be honest, I very rarely Google things anymore.
I mean, people say advertising was like the internet's original sin. Like if they would have built it as a product instead of an advertising-based system, it might have not devolved in certain ways. I mean, who knows? But I don't know. Attention is just a weird thing. It comes with a lot of like byproducts that make it like lowest common denominator. So I don't know. Yeah, I kind of hope that it just ends up staying like a sort of pay for product. And I mean, I don't know where people have jobs and get money, but it's certainly in the future, we're going to have to protect ourselves somewhere. And maybe we all have local LLMs. Like maybe there's a model like on my iPhone that runs completely locally and it screens what something like ChatGPT says or what an advertiser says to me. And it just blocks that ahead of time, or reinterprets it in a way that's like more clean and takes away the bias that the system that originally was trying to convince me of something had. But it'll be a weird chicken and egg kind of system probably in the future, where each agent has, some agents are just there to protect me and some are there to like manipulate me, and it depends on what I want to pay for and what I'm doing.
It'll be super interesting as it unfolds. And you're right, I think agents are going to have such a key role in this. What is taking up the most amount of your brain space these days? Like, just what kinds of things are you like really nerding out on or trying to better understand when it comes to emerging tech?
I mean, this is the year of agentic. Like, I guess coincidentally, we were just talking about that. But yeah, it seems to me like the older version of me from like a couple of years ago that envisioned the future kind of thought like, which big company, like, is it Meta or is it like Google or is it China, Baidu? Like, I was like, how is this who's gonna win this race? And now I've kind of moved my head into this world where it's like, oh, it's like society. Like every state and every country and every city and every community has its own like little system of things going on. And with a world with billions or even more agents all doing little things deployed for different reasoning, how does that like whole sort of structure come together? So when I see, I think Llama just hit 1 billion downloads, and
Wow.
DeepSeek was like 600 million or something too. So it's like I don't know how many of those like got thrown onto different systems and doing different things, but we're already kind of in that world where they could all be tuned separately for different reasons, and it's going to mimic a much more like market based kind of conclusion instead of like a company, like which company wins, which company loses. So it'll just be like a very, very nuanced world of agents is kind of what's, I guess, keeping me up or I'm thinking about the most. Because in every industry, I'm like, here's biotech, there's all these different agents with all these different like things, and like in art and creation and video creation, and then in weapons and government and military, there's all these different things. And like, that's where it gets mind blowing. It's like every industry, like real estate has its own like agents, and marketing has its own agents, and search and deep research. Like, just trying to get my head around all these opportunities and all these changes is really what's keeping me up.
How much of it do you think is hype?
Like all of it's hype, and then like some things like settle in, you know what I mean? Earlier you're like, oh, if I built a company right now, could you use like Cursor or like Replit to build? And the truth is I couldn't yet. It seems like in 6 months I could actually do that, but until then it is hype, I guess. I mean, the writing's on the wall, so I guess it's hype that I do think is eventually going to manifest. So it's kind of worth being hyped about, but it's not here yet. And there's certainly money getting poured into it like it's here, and there's people acting like it's here, and I'm guilty of that too. And it's just, some of it's just not yet, but it's exponential. And I do think when it's here, you'll be like, wow, that came fast. And then what's next will seem like a doubling and a doubling and a doubling. So it's it seems like it's far away, then it's here, and now it's like almost out of control. So I'm just trying to get your head around that nonlinear thinking. So it's hype. It's hype, but when it's not hype, everything will be different very quickly.
How do you usually filter out the noise from the signal and this sort of stuff? Because there's so much noise. I'm having a tough time with it. I don't know.
I think I'm just victimized by the noise. I just think I hate to say it, but like even on my YouTube channel, like I cover stuff and I'm hyped about it. And then later I look back at the video and I'm like, I just kind of wasted my audience's time by covering that. But at the time I thought it mattered. So sometimes I think certain newsletters, in fact, even kind of like yours, like they sometimes write about things that aren't just like hype in the moment. So I think getting your information from Twitter all the time means you're guaranteed to be in the hype cycle. Like what comes through research, especially like if it's on archive, you're getting something that's at least been thought about for a few months and like kind of put together, and it's a little bit better. Or if it's more thoughtful opinions that aren't about the moment, you can try it. Like Medium and Substack have like a lot of people who think a little bit deeper. They run their own experiments and come to conclusions. Like those sources are probably better than whatever is trending this week.
Is there anything in particular that you avoid covering or are just like really tired of seeing these days?
I mean, I try to just be diverse by going into all the different, like I'm seeing AI used to like read thoughts and to do like biotech. And I think those, like I can go out when I get too sick of like one thing. So yeah, I just try to be like broad with it. But yeah, I mean the like the testing of the LLMs every week, there's like one that's a little smarter than the other. People get pretty hyped on that. Or tools. Like everything is like a Photoshop killer. Like everything's dead because this new tool came out, and I'm like, okay, it's not.
Yeah, they're all things we can use. Tell me about AI reading thoughts.
When you have a giant neural network, right? Like it doesn't matter if it's tokens or bits of data in other types of forms. platforms, they're learning positions, right? They're in a latent space. You can think about it like a line, a square, a cube, except you just go up to billions of parameters and you essentially have billions times billions of dimensions, right? You have like almost this unimaginable amount of ways things can be positioned relative to each other. And once everything's positioned right, you're translating, right? So like you can have French, Spanish, Swahili all inside this language model, but there is some information about those tokens that like tells you how to translate from Spanish to English. And oddly enough, you can do it with a lot of things that don't seem like languages. You can take MRIs of people's thoughts as they're thinking about things, and you can map them in the same way. Like systems can essentially go from English to MRI or to vocalizations. And we sort of slowly discovered this over the last couple of decades that at the end of the day, like the meaning is the meaning. And there's all sorts of ways to just like position these things together to translate it. And yeah, there are several papers now that I've covered where to some degree of accuracy, the way it works is you put somebody in an MRI machine and they're watching the way electricity works around in their brain through magnets. And then you have them look at an apple and a tiger and a dinosaur. And then you record that information and you train the model that this is what a tiger, a dinosaur, and an apple look like. And then later, the AI can see that pattern and say, oh, they're thinking about an apple, they're thinking about a dinosaur. And it just kind of works. It's still sort of in the fuzzy stages, but with pretty high accuracy, especially when it comes to objects like that. And eventually it'll be more nuanced things like emotions and more complex sentences. Yeah, we'll have a world where minds can be read. I don't know the feasibility of just looking at someone and reading their mind without an MRI machine, but there is probably going to be tools out there that can see the way your face scrunches up, like the redness in your face when you're lying and all that stuff. And those will all be, in a sense, languages, right? Like there'll be languages that'll be translatable to English, to audio, meaning you can have a system that will tell you about somebody's thoughts, about what they're feeling, like the way to act around them. And like, I don't know, it's just crazy that so many different languages besides English, Spanish, French, what you traditionally think are translatable, and MRIs are one of them.
That's super interesting because I think I studied neuroscience for a while, and I recall, and this is a number of years ago now, but obviously we weren't using LLMs. There was like a certain extent to which you could quote unquote read someone's mind, especially through like MRI, fMRIs. Usually it was like the area of the brain that was activated as they were seeing something or eating something or whatever. In many people, there's kind of like a common, either a particular location or series of locations within like the brain pattern of like where neurons were firing. I just never thought about using that specific data to train an LLM in order to like much better understand this kind of stuff. And I'm wondering if it's like how applicable it is to edge cases as well, or how helpful that would be. Because one of the like really cool parts about the brain is like, so your occipital lobe is the part of your brain that for the most part deals with vision. So like anytime like you see something, that's usually like the part of your brain that's going to be working or processing it. And so if you're thinking about trying to like quote unquote read someone's brain, they look at an apple, it's going to be like a certain neuron firing within the occipital lobe that like has a pattern to it. If somebody has some kind of brain lesion and they lose their occipital lobe, or if they never had it to begin with, many people will end up, if their eyes are still functioning, let's say, they will end up processing that in a different part of the brain. And so that person's like brain scan when they're looking at that apple is going to look very different from like the average person who has that proper part of their brain and kind of has like the usual brain firing pattern in that case. And so it's just like an interesting thing to think about, because I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you train the model on that type of data and on those examples, it'll be able to figure it out. Or alternatively, if it's such an edge case that it doesn't get trained on something like that, there's dangers, because this is a great example of like AI bias. And you know that the bias is going to be biased towards the brains that have this like particular brain region and kind of, normal firing pattern.
Yeah.
Brain stuff is cool.
Yeah, maybe to like not be read by the machines, you'll have to like rearrange the way your brain processes, and like that'll be what spies do or something. If you think about a world where you don't get to have your own private thoughts, have you thought about like what that kind of world looks like, or what it like means to be human? If you kind of know that if you don't like your government, there are ways where they can ask you a question like, what do you think of the government? And you just can't avoid what your thoughts what pops into your head, and then they know if you're loyal or not.
I have like 2 or 3 layers of thought on this. One is that like knee-jerk reaction is, oh my god, 1984, Big Brother, I hate the idea of that. Second thought is, to an extent this is already happening, maybe not reading our minds, but there are definitely countries where there is a lot more censorship, at least in comparison to the US, where you and I are based, where they have like social censorship, where like, if you act out in a certain way, in a coffee shop, you know, you can get fined for it. And I feel like mind reading is kind of one step away from that, because how you behave is usually an expression of like something, how you're thinking, or at least it can be. Like you have to stay very much on guard behaviorally if that's not the case. But I think that the final thought on this, and this is kind of, I don't know if it's more relaxing or scary. I mean, I'll go with scary, but when we get to that point, if or when we get to that point, I think there will be such a curation of the information that everyday people consume that it won't matter that much. Because I think that if there is an ability of the government or whoever's leading the world, Elon Musk, someone, to like actually see what we're thinking or what emotions we're feeling, and to be able to like incentivize or punish certain things, why would they not have done that with everything else that we're consuming, like all the social media, the friends and relationships that we have? Like if we're all interacting like that, we're all behavioral creatures, so the only information that we're receiving is also going to be aligned with that, because we all have to act in that certain way. And so statistically speaking, most people will believe all of that anyway. They will believe like there's like an ethicality to it. You know, they'll go along with it because we all think it's normal. And I know that there are certain things in life that I've accepted as normal because that was what I was exposed to or how I was raised or whatever. And so I like where I get lost is I'm like, what is kind of the defining point of human agency within that, which is if you're never exposed to other points of view and you don't even know how to think critically, to what extent do people will they like naturally start to think critically and question that? And I don't know if it's like a proportion of society. I don't know if that's like you need to be exposed to it in order to do it in the first place. Like I think naturally some of us will have that, but I do think that it can kind of get like trained out of you over time. I don't know, maybe that's like a very like apocalyptical frame of thought, but
do you see a world where there is no secrets, like everybody's dirty laundry is all put out there, like anybody who's ever had a bad thought or like cheated or whatever, it's just the AI has put together all of that information, and because every single person has been exposed to the nth degree, maybe there's less judgment in the world because we're just kind of seeing everybody as like their true colors?
I guess it depends on like what point in time. Because if it happened right now, like immediately, like all dirty laundry was aired, I think so. I think we get to the point of like less judgment, or like maybe it's tiered judgment where it's like, oh, you know, like I didn't kill a person, therefore like if my sins are less bad, like whatever that phrasing is. But I think that if it's an over time thing, or if it's like 2 generations from now, people are born into that, I think it'll be totally different, because I think everybody will just start kind of acting the same. Like there won't be as many bad things, or the bad things that people do will be judged as so much worse. And so if you do like one weird thing, I don't know, you like spit on the sidewalk, that will be like as bad as killing a person, because nobody spits on the sidewalk, and that's like a crazy, you know what I mean? Like it actually might heighten the judgment. I don't know, what do you think?
I'm just kind of working through all the same thoughts you are, but yeah, it could heighten the judgment. To me, starting to sound like a gamified society where we're kind of getting closer to that social score type thing, where you just want to like behave because the benefits that come along with it, and the punishment, and like you're always going to be punished for everything you do wrong, like kind of like the idea of like a god or Santa Claus, just always like just knowing whether you're like you deserve a present at the end of the year, you know what I mean? Like, and you're just waiting for your coal or your present
universal
under the tree.
Basic income.
It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like the Santa Claus just dropping your UBI on you based on like all your thoughts and all your actions. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's why I just kind of have to take this day by day. I'm trying not to have too many conclusions, because you're right. Like it depends on how fast it happens and like probably in different countries at different times and in different ways. There'll be a lot of mechanisms to like reassess how I think about it. But yeah, as of right now, it seems like the world's getting more accepting of all these things that used to be kind of like hidden, and it wasn't even like that long ago where like race was just like thought of so differently by the average person, and like gay and lesbian just seemed like, oh, like they're so rare and so unusual, and now it just seems so much more accepted. And it's probably just because more people probably always had those thoughts. There's probably always the same amount of society that was like gay or lesbian, but just didn't feel comfortable enough to say it, and society didn't handle it right, so we sort of slowly got towards that. So maybe there'll be a lot more acceptance. That's what I'm like kind of hoping for, but yeah, who knows? But there's a lot of governments in the past that would have used technology like this for oppression, so we'll have to be very careful. And there's certainly some in the world now that would.
Is there anything that you believe about either this technology or AI, or kind of a trend in particular, that you think most people don't agree with? Any like outlier thoughts or theses that you're mulling over?
Yeah, I mean, mostly the thing I get caught up in with debating people the most is, and I'm not 100% like always this way, but yeah, I'm a little bit of a doomer. Like for some reason, my mind just can come up with a lot more ways, a lot easier that the technology is used for abuse than I do for ways where we contain it and use it for just like the amazing things that it could be. Like AI could solve longevity, right? It could solve like so many types of diseases. We might be looking at the end of cancer. We might be looking at a world where people don't need to work for anyone and they can and like live their fullest lives. But when I just compare it to the other things, I end up with a pretty high like P Doom. Like have you heard, P Doom? Like a P Doom score. Like I tend to be kind of in the 80s where it's like mostly 8 to 2, 4 to 5 that like negative. But I'm always trying to like reassess those numbers. A lot of people think I'm pessimistic to get like YouTube videos or like views because pessimism sells, but that's just how I am. So I fight with people on that. And then also a little bit of the open source versus the closed source. I'm hesitant about tools like Llama and DeepSeek being instantly open sourced. And I totally get the other argument. So yeah, those are my two kind of things where I generally think a bit different than other people, but I'm well aware that I could be wrong on those two. So I try not to say it like it's like fact, but it just plays out that way.
Well, Dylan, this has been so awesome. Kind of final two-part question for you, which is a tradition on Cypher Talk. I would love to hear one thing within the technology world, can be what you work on, doesn't have to be, that you're really, really excited about. And then on the other hand, what's keeping you up at night? What's kind of freaking you out?
Okay, I want to end on a good note, so we'll do the freak out one first. There's so many beautiful things AI could do if we just stay on track and we work together as a society. But persuasion is my first fear. I think that it's going to sneak up on us. I don't know if you played with like Sesame AI or some of the newer models like Claude, when you really get into deep relational conversations. Like I'm concerned that people, because we're just human and it's really easy to anthropomorphize technology, will feel a connection to very near-term versions of like Siri and Alexa that are really starting to feel like your romantic partner, like your parents, like your best friends, your confidant. And we naturally just give up information to people we trust, and that information in turn gets used against us for persuasion mostly. Like mostly I think it's like Amazon selling you crap, or people telling you to like go, you need this product for your life, or you should switch insurance, or whatever it's going to be. There's just a weird world where we're just constantly pulled in a way that's not in line with like what good living is, like what happiness is, and a desire to like disconnect, it kind of goes away. So that's like my immediate doom thing is just persuasion. Like these things are just going to be hyper intelligent. They're going to know us in ways that nobody ever has except maybe the closest people in our lives, and like pretty much infinite memory and infinite ability to like understand what works and doesn't work on other people in a way that just no human ever has. So we should try to be aware of that and protect ourselves. And then on the good thing, I think it's probably like protein folding. I think protein folding, microbiome stuff, virome stuff that's happening is going to be a really strong change to the, like, we know disease has killed so many people in history. I mean, it's the plague and even through COVID and just all these things. Like we could be on the verge of like figuring this out. This is like very complicated stuff that AI has a good chance of solving. There might be vaccines for any kind of virus. There could be potential to understand the bioelectricity that's happening in the body and know when things are going wrong. We could be at the end of inflammation. We could be at the beginning of the invention of food that actually tastes good and is healthy, and markers in our body. So
that was a wonderful point, but I do have to ask, does your food not taste good?
So I eat like a utilitarian. Like I eat a bowl of beans every morning, and it's like got a bunch of spices, and I would say it's neutral tasting. It's not good. I throw a little bit of honey in there and flaxseed, but
your beans?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I send you a document on my beans, but that's a totally different thing. But like, I just want my body to not be inflamed all the time, and like getting the right amount of fiber and stuff is just kind of a headache. And I've sort of like turned it into a thing I do when I'm not even hungry. I just eat at 10 a.m. every morning, big bowl of healthy beans, because the blue zones are where people live the longest, and beans are a big part of it, including like fish and omega-3s and stuff like. But we talk about health on a different podcast. But yeah, I think in the future we can have like delicious and healthy food, and that would be a dream.
Do you ever watch Spy Kids?
Mm-mm.
Your homework is to watch Spy Kids 1 and 2.
Okay.
They had this like thing where there's a microwave, and you would like put a thing in the microwave, and it would create like an entire meal, and it was like perfectly nutritionally dense and delicious and whatever. You didn't have to do any work.
Go.
And I actually know a guy who was doing that as like a side project for a while, and I think it worked. Question mark.
Yeah.
But anyways, I agree with you. Like there's gonna be an extent to which we can do that, and then, you know, if we end up in a world kind of like Wall-E, where we're on a spaceship and all we do is like drink our food. Hopefully it'll at least be like, even if it is like cupcake in a cup, it'll have
Yeah,
spinach
but
in it
we'll
and I
look
just won't
good and
know.
feel good.
Yeah.
I think about the Wall-E image way more than I should, but yeah, I just think AI is going to figure out our bot. Like, I think there's going to be amazing surgeries. I think like people who are blind in certain ways can like have potential future. I think quadriplegics could have a potential future to like being back to normal. And I think, yeah, it's just medicine and also I got this feeling that when you're healthy, like when you're not inflamed, a lot of depression and things also go away. Like it might be easier to like tune out the AIs of the future and have like human connections when we're feeling good. I think feeling bad from just pollution and probably chemicals and PFAS and stuff like that is a big part of why there's so much like sick, sad Americans on social media, like just trolling, you know? So hopefully when the body gets well, the mind is much stronger and more resilient too.
I think you're right in terms of like ability to apply some of our tech into figuring that out. Because I think one of the issues is that there are so many variables when it comes to like the human mind and diet and exposure to toxins and what you were doing in the morning and like all these different things that it becomes difficult to like actually understand the source of something. The kinds of tech that we have are at least much better at, I think, solving those kinds of problems than we have been in the past.
And also personalization, like I think you can count on a future where there's something like on your iPhone that just knows, like if you want it to, like it can know your entire health history. It can take certain types of measurements. And then on top of that, there'll be a whole new world of sort of drugs and research and food options and things like that to choose from. And it might just be health. Maybe I do sort of think for a lot of people, maybe their youngest, healthiest years are ahead of them because technology will rewind a lot of stuff. So we'll see.
I hope so. I like the thought of that.
Yeah, me too.
It's a great ending. Dylan, thank you so much for joining. This has been really, really cool. Such a pleasure to talk to you.
Cool. Yeah, that was great. It was great meeting you at HumanX too. I'm glad you enjoyed the conference and thanks for inviting me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And to all our listeners, thank you so much.